I slept with her 3 times before I found out she was my girlfriend's mother. The first time, I did not even know her name. It started on a Friday night at a small roadside bar just outside downtown Portland. I came alone, right after a blazing fight with Emma, my girlfriend of nearly 2 years. I do not even remember what we were fighting about. Probably something about me not being ambitious enough. Again, I just wanted a dark corner, a few shots of bourbon, and a way to drown the feeling of being misunderstood. I did not expect to meet anyone important that night. Definitely not someone who would unravel my entire life. And then she walked in. Black dress, tight fit, shoulder-length dark brown hair, eyes that belonged to a woman who had lost something or someone but still carried danger like perfume. She did not look at anyone else, only me. I cannot explain why, but I knew she came for me. My name is Nathan Carter. I am 27 years old. I work as a designer for a mid-sized creative agency in downtown Portland. Pretty average life, nothing. Emma, on the other hand, is brilliant and driven. She was top of her class in law school and constantly pushes me to grow up, do more. That night, I walked out of our apartment with fury burning in my chest. Portland in winter always smells like damp leaves and cheap whiskey. I ended up at the Oak Room, an old school bar with dim lighting and jazz humming in the background. It was the perfect place to... That is where I saw her. She sat on the bar stool next to mine, said nothing, and ordered a drink with a subtle nod. I glanced at her. Lightly tanned skin, tight lips, an old French watch on her, mid-40s maybe. I did not speak first. But she did. You look like someone who needs either. I gave a half... Both. She smiled. Not flirty, not fake. A kind of smile that said she had nothing left to lose. We talked for about an hour. I do not remember. She never gave me her name. Part of me did not want to know. Because knowing meant remembering, and remembering meant I would be responsible. When she got up, I knew what was coming. That night, I slept with a stranger. The next morning she was gone. I figured it was over, but I was wrong. A week later, I saw her again. Emma came out from the kitchen, smiling. Nathan, I want you to meet my mum. I nearly dropped my wine glass. Her. Monica. Emma's mother. She looked at me. No surprise, but I knew. She knew. We both knew. We had crossed the line, and neither of us was about to stop. I should have walked away that night. I should have ignored the drink she poured and the way her fingers touched mine when she handed it to me. I should have remembered that I was in her house, that her daughter was asleep upstairs, that this was real life and not some twisted dream. But instead, I let it happen. I watched her closely as she moved through the kitchen, barefoot, wine glass in hand, and a long silk robe that did little to hide the curves of her body. Her confidence was unsettling. She wasn't nervous, not even a little. I remember thinking how odd that was. Any other woman would have flinched at the guilt, but not her, not Madison's mother. She leaned on the counter, smiled at me, and said something about how young men never really know what they want. I didn't even reply. My mind was spinning, my body frozen. Maybe part of me wanted to see how far she'd go. Maybe part of me wanted to be tested. The moment she stepped closer, I felt it. That tension, the kind that chokes your breath before it even reaches your lungs. She whispered something I can't even remember now. Something meaningless. But the way she said it made it feel like a sin. She touched my face, slowly, with fingers that felt too warm, too familiar. Her breath smelled like red wine and jasmine. My heart was pounding so loud I swore she could hear it, and I didn't stop her. I didn't say a word. I didn't move when she pressed her lips to mine, and I didn't resist when her robe fell to the floor, and I saw her bare skin in the dim light of the kitchen. Do you know what shame feels like? It's not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, a slow burning inside your chest, like you're watching yourself from far away, screaming to stop, but your body is no longer yours. She led me upstairs like it was the most natural thing in the world. Every step creaked. Every breath felt stolen. I thought of Madison. I thought of the way she smiled when she first introduced me to her mom. I thought of how kind her mother had seemed. Gentle. Warm. And yet, this was her now. wrapping her arms around me in the dark hallway like I was the one who had knocked on her door looking for trouble. We ended up in the guest bedroom. She said she didn't want to wake Madison. The irony burned me, but I didn't stop her. I wish I could say I was drunk, or confused, or manipulated. But the truth is, I knew. I knew exactly what was happening. Afterward, I lay there staring at the ceiling, her breath soft against my chest, and I realized something terrifying. This wasn't a mistake. It felt like the beginning of something far worse. She turned to me, her eyes half closed, and said, "You'll never tell her, will you?" I said nothing, because even then, I didn't know the answer. I stopped answering Madison's texts for a whole day. Not because I was mad at her, not because I needed space, but because I couldn't bring myself to face what I had done. Every time my phone buzzed, guilt clawed at my throat like a hand trying to choke me from the inside. She messaged things like, "Are you okay? Did I do something wrong? Please, talk to me." I stared at the screen, but my fingers froze. What was I supposed to say? "Hey, sorry I hooked up with your mum while you were sleeping upstairs." Number. There were no words for this. No way to undo it. No way to erase the memory of her mother's voice, whispering my name as if it belonged to her now. I thought maybe I could just pretend it didn't happen, go back to normal. Maybe it was just a moment of insanity, a mistake neither of us would speak of again. But then she texted me. Her mom. She texted me. I remember just staring at the message for 5 full minutes. It read, "We need to talk. Come by tonight. She won't be home." I should have ignored it. I should have deleted the message. But instead, like a fool, I showed up. The house was too quiet when I arrived. The same smell of jasmine lingered in the hallway, like the scent had been waiting for me. She answered the door wearing jeans and a black top. Nothing seductive. Nothing revealing. But somehow, that made it worse. She looked serious. Too serious. Like this wasn't just guilt or regret. Like she had already made up her mind about something. We sat at the kitchen table. Same table where she had leaned over me 2 nights before. Same spot where I had first let my guard down. She poured herself a glass of water, not wine. No flirtation this time. Just silence. Then she looked up at me and said, "We can't ignore this." I didn't respond. She continued, "I'm not going to pretend what we did was okay, but I'm also not going to lie. I don't regret it." That hit harder than anything else she could have said. No regret. Not even a little. Her eyes were calm, her voice steady, as if she had already accepted the consequences, as if she had rehearsed this entire conversation in her head 100 times. I asked, "What do you want from me?" She took a breath. Honesty. And maybe a chance to understand what this really is. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I just sat there, numb, lost, broken in ways I didn't even know I could break. She reached across the table and touched my hand, and that was when I pulled away. It was like waking up from a nightmare. Everything hit me all at once. Madison. Her smile. The way she trusted me. The way she looked at me like I was someone good. Someone she could count on. And here I was, sitting in her mother's kitchen, trying to figure out if I was about to destroy the best thing that ever happened to me. I stood up, said nothing, and walked out. She didn't stop me. She didn't say my name. She just watched. And I swear, for a moment, she almost smiled. Not a happy smile. Not a smug one either. But something in between. Like she had known from the beginning that this would be a slow unraveling. When I got home that night, I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just kept thinking one thing over and over again. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 3 days passed. 3 long, miserable days. Madison thought I had food poisoning. That was the excuse I gave her when I stopped answering phone calls and started dodging her invites. She came by with soup and medicine, left it at my door with a handwritten note. "Hope you feel better soon. I miss you. M." I stared at her note for hours, folding and unfolding it in my hands, like it would somehow erase my shame. But nothing could. I couldn't sleep anymore. Every night was filled with images I didn't ask for. The curve of her mother's mouth when she whispered my name. The soft click of her heels as she walked into the room like she already owned it. The way she looked at me with eyes that didn't belong to someone else's mother. But worse than all of that was Madison's voice in my head, laughing, teasing, loving me. I was living in hell, and I had made it myself. Friday evening, Madison called again. I didn't pick up. 30 seconds later, a text popped up. "You okay? I'm coming over. I'm worried." Panic surged in my chest. I looked around the apartment like there was something I needed to hide, but the real mess wasn't in the room. It was inside me. She arrived 20 minutes later. She wore the hoodie I gave her last fall, oversized and soft, with the sleeves pulled over her hands. She looked like comfort. She looked like trust. I hated myself. She walked in and immediately noticed something was off. "Are you really sick? You look like you haven't slept." I lied. I said I was just tired. She believed me, because that's what you do when you love someone. You believe them. We sat on the couch, and she leaned her head on my shoulder. I was stiff. She didn't seem to notice. She whispered, "I've missed you." These last few days felt weird. I knew what she meant. I missed her too, but not the way she thought. I missed her before the lie, before the fracture, before I became the version of myself I never thought I'd be. Then she said something I'll never forget. "My mum's been acting weird too." I froze. She continued, "I don't know. She's just been quieter. She asked me about you last night, said you looked pale the other day." I tried not to react. "You talked about me?" "Yeah." She seemed concerned. Or maybe curious. I couldn't really tell. I changed the subject as fast as I could, but inside, my stomach turned. They were talking about me, about my sickness, about my lies, and neither of them knew the real reason why I was falling apart. That night, she stayed over. We didn't do anything. Just laid in bed, fully clothed, her head resting on my chest while she scrolled through TikTok. Her breath against my skin was warm, too warm, like a reminder of everything I didn't deserve. Around 2 a.m., I heard her breathing slow. She had fallen asleep, peaceful, unaware. And that's when I got the second message, from her mum. Again, it said, "You can't run from this. Neither can I. Come over tomorrow. We finish this." I stared at the screen, hands shaking. My mouth went dry. Her daughter was literally asleep beside me, and her mother was texting me like this was a secret affair in some trashy novel. But this wasn't fiction. This was real. This was horrifying. I didn't reply. Not that night. The next morning, I woke up early. Madison was still asleep, curled up like a child. I left a note on the nightstand saying I'd run out to grab coffee and breakfast. I lied again. I drove to her house, to her mum. Every turn of the wheel felt like I was driving into my own grave. She opened the door before I knocked. She had been waiting. I didn't walk in this time. I stood at the threshold. "This has to stop," I said. She didn't look surprised. She only asked, "Why did you come then?" I didn't know. Maybe I wanted to be firm. Maybe I wanted closure. Or maybe, deep down, some disgusting part of me still wanted her. She stepped closer. Close enough for me to smell her perfume again. It made my skin crawl. "You're in love with her," she said. "Madison. But you're also afraid of me." I shook my head. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to control the narrative." She smiled softly. "I don't want to control it. I want to understand it. You can't pretend that night didn't mean something. It meant I made the worst mistake of my life." She tilted her head. "Then why are you here?" I didn't answer, because the truth was, I didn't know anymore. I turned around and walked away. This time, she didn't follow. And yet, somehow, I felt like the shadow of her gaze stayed with me the entire way home. When I got back, Madison was gone. She'd left a sticky note on my mirror. Said, "Call me when you're back. I love you." Those 3 words. I love you. They felt like blades. Because I didn't deserve them. Not anymore. Not ever again. The next few days passed in a haze. Noah went to work, made small talk with co-workers, even smiled at the barista at his regular coffee shop, but everything felt hollow. His mind was a battlefield, overrun with guilt, temptation, fear, and something worse. Craving. Every time his phone buzzed, his heart would jolt. And it was never her. Her silence was unbearable. It made him feel like a child who had done something terrible and was waiting for the punishment he knew would come. Then, on a Wednesday evening, it happened again. Noah had just stepped out of the shower when he saw the missed call. One single name on the screen. Elaine. He froze. His skin, still wet, prickled like ice had touched it. Before he could even process what to do, his phone buzzed again. A message this time. Come by tomorrow. Morning. Same time. Same door. Nothing more. Noah stared at it for a long time. He wanted to delete it. Pretend it never happened. Block the number. But he didn't. His thumb hovered over the screen, shaking. What the hell was he doing? He lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling, thinking of all the ways this could ruin his life. Ruin Ava's life. And yet, when the morning sun cracked over the rooftops and lit up his apartment in a warm glow, he found himself dressed, shoes on, keys in hand. He told himself he would go only to say it had been a mistake, that they needed to stop, that this could never happen again. But when Elaine opened the door, her eyes calm and her body wrapped in a soft robe, he said nothing, and when she pulled him inside, he didn't resist. There was no conversation, no small talk, no moralizing. It was like the moment the door closed, everything outside that house ceased to exist. She didn't ask about Ava. He didn't mention guilt. They were two people who had crossed a line, and now neither of them seemed to know how to go back. Afterward, as they lay side by side on her bed, the silence was thicker than the air. Elaine lit a cigarette and stared at the ceiling, her expression unreadable. Noah sat up, pulling the sheets around his waist. "This has to stop," he said quietly. Elaine looked at him and exhaled smoke slowly. Her lips curved, not into a smile exactly, but something close to amusement. "You always say that after," she said softly. "But you came back." Noah swallowed hard. He didn't have a reply. He left her house that day feeling like he had lost something he couldn't name. It was not just guilt anymore. It was something deeper, like he had been pulled into a current and was too tired to swim against it. At dinner that evening, Ava noticed something was off. Her fingers touched his arm gently as she asked if he was okay. Noah smiled and lied through his teeth. Said work was stressful, that he was just tired. She believed him. Of course she did, because Ava loved him. Trusted him. That made everything so much worse. As the weeks passed, the affair continued like a secret rhythm. Every Thursday morning, he would visit her under the excuse of early meetings or errands. Elaine never called or texted beyond their appointments. She was careful, composed. The kind of woman who could hide a whole storm behind a calm expression. And Noah hated her for that. But he hated himself more. One morning, as he was getting dressed in her bedroom, he noticed a picture frame on her nightstand. It was a photo of Ava as a little girl, smiling with missing teeth, hugging a dog. He stared at it for a long time. Elaine watched him from the bed, her voice quiet. She loved that dog. Noah didn't answer. His hands were shaking. "You should stop coming," she said suddenly. He looked at her, startled. "This is going to hurt her," Elaine continued. "She doesn't deserve that." Noah wanted to scream, wanted to ask why she started this in the first place, why she opened the door that day. But the words died in his throat. Instead he said, "Do you regret it?" Elaine looked away. "I regret that I didn't stop it before it started," she said. "But not the moments. Not those." Noah left that day feeling more broken than ever, because for the first time it sounded like the end. Noah tried to stop. For real this time. He ignored her message the following Thursday, deleted it without reading the full sentence. He silenced his phone and went out for a long walk around the city, hoping the noise and the people would drown out the pull inside him. He told himself it was done. Over. He would reclaim his soul, rebuild the trust he had broken inside himself. But the silence felt like a scream. That night, as he lay next to Ava, her head resting peacefully on his chest, he stared at the ceiling and felt like a liar. Her breath was steady. Her fingers occasionally brushed his ribs in her sleep. She was innocent. She didn't know the man beside her had become someone else entirely. The days that followed were better. Noah felt lighter. He started cooking dinner again. They laughed over wine. He surprised her with small things, a playlist she had mentioned once, her favorite granola, and for a few hours at a time he believed maybe he could erase it, push the past under the rug, and nail the corners down, until he saw Elaine again. It wasn't planned. Ava had invited him to stop by her mother's place to help move a box from the garage. "Just 10 minutes," she said. "Nothing strange." Noah hesitated. His pulse jumped before he could even reply. But saying no would be suspicious. And so he said sure, casually, like it meant nothing. When they arrived, Elaine was in the kitchen, wearing jeans and a soft blue sweater. She looked exactly as she always did. Unbothered. Cool. But when her eyes met his, something flickered. A pause that lasted just a second too long. Ava didn't notice. She kissed her mother's cheek and led Noah toward the garage. The box was heavier than expected, and while Ava looked for something in the hallway closet, Noah carried it into the living room. Elaine was waiting there. He tried not to look at her, but she stepped forward and gently took the box from his arms, setting it down by the wall. "Thank you," she said. Quiet. Almost like a whisper. He nodded, lips pressed tight, then turned to walk away. But she touched his wrist. Brief. Like a spark. "You really meant to stay away, didn't you?" He didn't answer. She let go and stepped back. "It's better that way," she said, mostly to herself. Ava came in then, cheerful, unaware. They stayed only a few minutes longer. But to Noah, it felt like standing in the center of a burning building, trying to pretend the heat was in his imagination. Later that night, Ava scrolled through photos on her phone as they sat on the couch. She laughed, showed him one from a few years ago of her and her mother at the beach. Elaine was younger in the photo, but still had that distant look in her eyes, as if she always knew more than she said. Noah smiled, but inside his thoughts roared. He dreamed of Elaine that night. It wasn't sexual. It was worse. In the dream, they sat in a church. Ava was at the altar in a wedding dress. Elaine turned to him and whispered something he couldn't understand. Then blood started dripping from her hands. Noah woke up in a cold sweat. The next morning, he called in sick to work. He sat on the floor of his living room, with his back against the wall, heart racing. He was falling apart, piece by piece, and no one saw it. A message came in at noon. No words, just a photo. It was the framed picture of young Ava and the dog, the one he had stared at in Elaine's bedroom. He stared at it again, now on his phone, his hands trembling. Below the image, a new message. "Do you still feel nothing?" He didn't reply. He deleted the message, threw the phone across the room. But it was too late. That night, he stood outside Elaine's house again. He didn't knock. She opened the door before he could. They didn't speak, didn't touch. Not at first. They just looked at each other. The wind rustled the leaves behind him. Somewhere far away, a dog barked. And then she stepped aside, and he walked in. Elaine poured 2 glasses of red wine, her hands steady as if this were just another quiet evening. But it wasn't. The air between them was loaded with silence, the kind that carried every unspoken word like an echo through a cave. Noah stood in the doorway, still wet from the drizzle outside, unsure whether to take off his coat or run out the door. She placed 1 glass on the table without looking at him, then sat down on the couch and pulled her knees close to her chest. The television was off. The only sound in the room was the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the low throb of Noah's heartbeat in his ears. "You don't have to stay," she said. He didn't answer. He took off his coat and sat on the other end of the couch. "It's not right," Elaine said softly. Her voice was calm, almost too calm, like she had accepted something he still refused to admit. Noah stared at the floor. He hated how familiar the room felt. He could trace every corner of it with his eyes closed. The painting above the fireplace. The scent of lavender lingering in the cushions. The light bulb that always flickered when it rained. She looked at him. "I haven't felt this alive in years." His throat was dry. He wanted to say something meaningful, something that would make this less cruel, less selfish. But all he said was, "Me neither." Elaine stood up and walked to the window. She pulled back the curtain and looked out into the night. Her reflection hovered faintly in the glass. A woman trapped between decisions she never meant to make. "What are we doing, Noah?" He rose from the couch slowly. Every step toward her felt like walking into a storm he couldn't escape. "I don't know anymore." She turned to him. Her eyes searched his face for some kind of answer, some excuse that would make this forgivable. But there was none. She reached out and touched his cheek, her fingers trembling for the first time. "We can't keep doing this." He nodded, but he didn't move away. "Then why are you still here?" He didn't know. Register. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't wild. It was full of desperation. The kind that makes your chest ache because you know it's wrong, but you still do it anyway. It was a kiss that said goodbye, even as it pulled them closer. They ended up in her bedroom again. The same way they always did. The same shadows. The same guilt. When it was over, they lay side by side in silence, listening to the rain. Noah stared at the ceiling. "I'm losing myself," he whispered. Elaine didn't reply. A few minutes passed. Then she said, "Do you think she'll ever know?" Noah closed his eyes. Her voice sounded miles away. "I think I'm already watching her fade from me." He sat up and looked at her. In the dim light, she looked older, tired, worn by the weight of everything they were hiding. "This isn't love, Elaine." She didn't flinch. "I know." She reached over and touched his hand, but it felt like it when I needed it to. Noah left just before sunrise. The streets were empty. The city was still sleeping, and so was Ava. When he got home, he sat in the shower until the water turned cold. He thought about telling her. He imagined her face, the disbelief, the tears, the way her whole world would tilt off its axis. But when he heard her footsteps outside the bathroom door and her soft voice calling his name, he simply dried off and walked out with a smile. They had breakfast together. She told him about her dream, about a trip to the mountains, and he nodded and said they should go someday. But inside, he was somewhere else. He checked his phone when she wasn't looking. No new messages. That day, he went to work and stared blankly at his screen. He tried to answer emails but couldn't remember the words he typed. His mind kept drifting to Elaine, to that moment in her room, to the taste of the wine, to the scent of her skin on his hands. Later that evening, Ava kissed him goodbye as she left for dinner with friends. He stayed back. He told himself he would not go, not this time, but the house was too quiet. The silence returned, screaming louder than ever, and once again he found himself at her door. Noah sat at the coffee shop near his office, staring at a cup of black coffee that had gone cold. The usual noise of chatter, steam, and clinking cups filled the space, but none of it registered. The world felt like it was playing in the background of a movie he no longer belonged to. His phone buzzed on the table. One message. From Elaine. "I miss you." He locked the screen without replying. He should have deleted the message. He should have blocked her days ago. But he didn't, because a part of him still needed her. Not the way he needed air or food or sleep, but the way a wound needs to ache to prove it's still there. The bell over the door jingled, and he looked up, startled. It was Ava. She didn't see him at first. She was laughing, walking in with a co-worker from the school, a tall man with kind eyes and a teacher's patience. Noah had seen him once before during a parent-teacher conference. He watched them take a seat across the room. Ava leaned in, smiling, animated. Her laughter wasn't forced. It wasn't a mask. It was real. And it broke something inside Noah. He stood up and walked out, leaving his untouched coffee behind. The guilt followed him like a shadow. He couldn't remember a time when his head felt clear. Every decision felt like it came from someone else's body, like he was watching himself spiral in slow motion. That night, Ava came home with a bag of groceries and kissed him on the cheek. She told him about her day, about a student who made her cry and another who brought her a handmade bracelet. She laughed at her own stories. Noah nodded, responded at the right moments, but his mind was buried under a weight he could no longer carry. After dinner, she sat next to him on the couch. "You've been distant lately," she said. He looked at her. Her eyes were soft but searching. "I've just been tired. Work's been a mess." She tilted her head. "You're not a good liar, Noah." He didn't respond. "Is there something you need to tell me?" The silence between them thickened. The moment he had feared was now standing right in front of him, demanding a choice. He almost said it. Almost. But instead, he reached for her hand and held it. "I'm sorry. I've just been lost." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We'll find our way back, right?" Noah closed his eyes. "I hope so." But he knew he was lying again. Later that night, while Ava slept beside him, Noah got up and went to the living room. The clock ticked loudly in the silence. He stared at the ceiling, then finally opened his phone. He typed and deleted 3 different messages to Elaine before settling on one. We can't keep doing this. I need to stop. He hit send. The message was read a minute later. No reply. Good, he told himself. But it didn't feel good. It felt like tearing off his own skin. The days after were numb. No messages. No secret visits. No glances stolen across a crowded room. He tried to focus on his life with Ava. Tried to rebuild something real. They cooked together. Watched movies. Took walks like they used to. But something was missing. Not just in him, but between them. Then one afternoon, Ava came home early. Noah was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. She placed her bag on the counter and looked at him with a strange expression. I saw her today. His hand stopped. Who? Elaine. He dropped the knife. Ava didn't flinch. She was outside the school, waiting in her car. She didn't get out, but she saw me. Noah turned slowly. What was she doing there? I don't know. But when I looked at her, she smiled. Just for a second. And I felt something cold crawl up my spine. Noah opened his mouth, but no words came out. Ava stepped closer. You're having an affair with her, aren't you? The silence screamed louder than a confession. Ava nodded slowly. How long? Noah swallowed hard. 3 months. She closed her eyes. With my mother. He said nothing. Ava took a deep breath. Her voice cracked. I trusted you, Noah. I believed in you more than I believed in myself. He stepped toward her. It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I didn't plan any of it. She stared at him, her face pale. You ruined me. Then she turned and walked out of the kitchen. He stood there, alone, surrounded by the sharp scent of onions and guilt. That night, Ava didn't sleep in their bed. She stayed in the guest room, and when Noah knocked, she didn't answer. He sat on the floor outside her door until morning, listening to every quiet sob, every rustle of the sheets. The next day, she was gone before he woke up. A note on the table. I need time. Please, don't call. And just like that, the home they built began to collapse. The days following that last visit to Helen's house felt like living inside a ticking clock. Every moment passed slowly, painfully, like a countdown to something inevitable. I avoided Sarah more than ever, making excuses about work, family, anything that would give me just enough distance to breathe. But even breathing had become difficult lately. Helen hadn't texted me since that night. No calls. No subtle, cryptic messages. Nothing. At first, I thought it was her way of testing me, waiting to see if I would come running. But after a week, her silence felt heavier. It wasn't passive. It was intentional. And it burned. I sat alone in my apartment most nights, replaying everything. The way her fingers trembled when they touched mine. The way her breath hitched whenever I whispered her name. The way we crossed every boundary and pretended we could just walk away from it untouched. But we were touched, marked. And now it was starting to consume everything around us. One Thursday evening, Sarah called me. I let it ring twice before answering. Hey babe, she said. Her voice sounded small, like she had been crying. What's wrong? I asked, sitting up straight. Can you come over? Please. I don't want to be alone tonight. I hesitated, my heart thudding. Being around her was becoming harder. Not because I didn't care, but because every time I looked into her eyes, I saw guilt. A kind of guilt that grew heavier with every lie I told. Yeah, I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I arrived, she opened the door already in pajamas. Her eyes were red. I stepped in, and immediately I noticed the house was quiet. Too quiet. No music, no television, just stillness. Something about it made my skin crawl. She led me to the living room. On the table were 2 mugs of untouched tea, slightly steaming. She sat down and motioned for me to join her. What happened? I asked. She sighed, then stared at her lap. It's Mom, she said. My stomach clenched. I looked at her carefully. What about her? She's been acting weird, distant. She barely talks to me lately. She avoids eye contact. Sometimes I hear her crying at night. But when I ask her what's wrong, she brushes me off. I tried to act casual, tried to keep my voice steady. Maybe she's just going through something. Midlife crisis, stress, who knows. Sarah shook her head. Number. This is different. It started around the time you and I got serious, and lately, I don't know. I get this weird feeling like she's hiding something. I felt like vomiting. Have you talked to her about it? I asked. Yeah. But she just smiles and says she's fine. The way she says it, though, it's like a mask. Like she's trying too hard to sound normal. I couldn't look at her. My eyes drifted to the window. The sky was starting to darken. Rain was forming on the horizon. Then she said something that made my heart stop. Do you think she's having an affair? I froze. My heart felt like it had slammed against a wall. I turned back to her slowly. What makes you say that? She bit her lip. I don't know. I saw her looking at someone's phone once. She was crying. Then when I walked in, she hid it. She got really defensive. I tried to grab it, and she practically screamed at me. Do you know who it was? I asked, barely able to push the words out. She shook her head. Number. But I have this feeling it's someone close. Someone she shouldn't be involved with. She's never done anything like this before. My palms were sweating. I clenched them into fists. Sarah leaned in closer. And now you've been distant too. Acting weird. Cancelling plans. I don't want to think the worst, but I can't help wondering. Is something going on between you two? My throat dried instantly. It felt like 1,000 needles pricked at my skin. I laughed weakly, hoping the sound would distract her from the truth. That's crazy, I said. Your mum and I barely talk. You're being paranoid. She nodded slowly, but her eyes didn't believe me. Okay, she said softly. I'm sorry. I guess I'm just scared. I don't want to lose you. You won't, I lied. We sat in silence for a long time. The rain eventually came, tapping gently against the windows like a cruel metronome. I stared at my reflection in the glass and hated what I saw. That night, after Sarah had fallen asleep on the couch, I got up and walked to the hallway. Her mother's bedroom door was closed. The light inside was off. I placed my hand gently on the doorknob, then quickly pulled it back. I wanted to knock. I wanted to see her face. I wanted to ask what the hell we were doing, but I didn't. Instead, I turned and left the house. Out in the cold, I walked for blocks. My thoughts were racing. I felt like I was losing my grip on everything. The guilt was a shadow that followed me wherever I went. And yet, underneath all of it, there was still desire. A part of me still ached for her. When I finally got home, I found a text on my phone. It was from Helen. Only 3 words. We need to talk. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Sodui. The morning light filtered through the half-open blinds, casting soft golden stripes across the hardwood floor of my apartment. I had barely slept. My head throbbed from the weight of memories and guilt, and my body felt like a shell, emptied of anything but confusion. The silence in the room was deafening. No television, no phone, no music. Just me and the echo of last night replaying in my mind. I sat on the edge of the bed, still fully clothed from the night before, my hands gripping the sheets like I might fall through the floor if I let go. I stared at my phone, debating whether I should call her. Not Rachel, her mother. It had been over 8 hours since I left her house. 8 hours of battling myself. The shame, the thrill, the disbelief, the crushing weight of what we had done. I tried to tell myself it was a mistake, that we had both been overwhelmed, lonely, caught up in some twisted emotional current. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the whole truth. There had been something more, something simmering beneath the surface for far longer than I had allowed myself to admit. A soft buzz shook the silence. My phone lit up on the nightstand. Rachel. Hey, can we talk later? I stared at the screen for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. What was I going to say? How could I possibly look her in the eyes again, knowing what I had done? Suddenly, I felt sick. I ran to the bathroom and emptied my stomach into the toilet. When I was done, I just sat there on the cold tile floor, trying to breathe, trying to ground myself. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rewind time. I wanted to punch a hole in the wall. I ended up taking a long shower, hoping the hot water would somehow wash away the memory of her skin, the sound of her voice in the dark, the way she had looked at me like she knew every secret I was too afraid to say aloud. When I stepped out, the apartment was still too quiet. I needed air. I drove without direction, just letting the streets guide me. The sun was already high, the world moving on as if nothing had happened. People walking dogs, drinking coffee, laughing with friends. How could everything look so normal when I felt like I had stepped out of reality? Eventually, I ended up in front of a park, a quiet spot we used to visit when Rachel and I first started dating. I remembered us lying on a blanket, her head on my chest, watching the clouds drift overhead. I remembered the way she would laugh with her whole body, like nothing in the world could touch her. That laugh had been fading lately, and now I knew why. Because I had been drifting too. Drifting into something I never should have allowed. I sat on a bench and watched the wind blow through the trees. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was her, Rachel's mother. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. Then I answered. She didn't say hello, just breathed into the line for a second. "Are you okay?" she finally asked. "Number," I replied. "Me neither." There was a long silence. I didn't know what I expected her to say. To apologize? To say she regretted it? To say she didn't? "Last night was a mistake," she said. But the way she said it lacked conviction. It was like she was trying to convince herself, not me. "Yeah," I replied. It was. Another silence. "I shouldn't have let it happen," she whispered. "But I didn't stop you either, did I?" I felt like I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened. This wasn't just about one night. This was about everything that led to it. The glances, the accidental touches, the moments that lingered too long. It had been building, slow and silent like a storm on the horizon. "You have to talk to Rachel," she said quietly. "Whatever happens next, she deserves the truth. We can't pretend nothing happened." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I knew she was right. But the thought of looking Rachel in the eyes and telling her the worst thing imaginable made my stomach twist. "What are we going to do?" I asked. There was no answer at first. Then she said the one thing that scared me more than anything else. "I don't know." I ended the call without saying goodbye. There was nothing left to say. I sat on that bench for hours, watching the sky shift from blue to orange to purple. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't think. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't over. And worse, I wasn't sure I wanted it to be. I could barely sleep. Each time I closed my eyes, the image of her face came back to me. Not Emily, her mother, Catherine. The weight of what I had done was unbearable. I had destroyed everything. I had betrayed the only person who ever truly loved me. And worse, I had done it with someone who should have protected her. Someone who should have protected me too. The guilt wasn't just emotional. It was physical. I felt it in my chest, like a pressure that refused to let up. My phone buzzed constantly. Emily had called me 12 times, left 6 voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. But I couldn't answer. What could I possibly say? That I had slept with her mother and then lied to her face? That every moment we spent together, I was living a double life? I needed to see her, to explain, to confess. Even if it meant losing her forever, I couldn't live with myself without at least giving her the truth. That morning, I drove to her apartment. My hands were shaking the entire time. I could see the lights on. I knew she was home. I walked up the stairs like a man headed for the gallows. My steps were heavy. My heart even heavier. She opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes were red. She had been crying. For hours, maybe. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Where have you been?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She stepped aside and let me in. I sat on the couch, unable to look at her. The silence between us was unbearable. Finally, she said it. "You're hiding something from me. I know it. I feel it. What happened between you and my mother?" The words hit me like a bullet. I looked at her. Really looked. And I saw something I hadn't seen before. She already knew. Maybe not the whole story. But she had sensed it. Women know. They always do. I tried to speak, tried to form words, but she kept going. "She's been different too. Distant, cold. And every time I mentioned your name around her, she would freeze, like there was some secret between you. Is that what it is?" Are you keeping something from me? My lips trembled. I wanted to lie, to protect her. But lying had brought me here, to this moment, this breaking point. Yes, I whispered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Her face turned pale. She backed away as if I had just struck her. What did you do? I took a deep breath. My hands clenched. My chest tightened. And then I said the words that would end everything. I slept with your mother. Time stopped. The room became still. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at me like I was a stranger, someone she had never met before. The next moments were a blur. She screamed, cried, threw things, demanded answers. I tried to explain that it was a mistake, that I was confused, that I never meant for it to happen, that it only happened once. But the more I spoke, the more I realized how pathetic it all sounded. Nothing could undo what I had done. She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing, and all I could do was stand there, useless, broken, a coward. You were everything to me, she said. I trusted you. I would have given you everything. I know, I whispered. That's what makes it worse. Then get out, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was final. I left, and this time I didn't look back. The silence that followed our fight was deafening. It wasn't the kind of silence that felt peaceful or healing. It was the kind that wraps around you like a shroud, suffocating and heavy, filled with unsaid words and shattered trust. Days passed without a single message from her. No texts, no missed calls, just emptiness. I had tried to apologize. I had sent messages the night after the confrontation. I called her repeatedly, each time hoping she would pick up, that she would scream at me, cry, say anything. But there was nothing. Just the cold silence of a phone ringing endlessly into the void. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept playing back the look on her face, that raw mixture of disbelief and heartbreak. She had stared at me like she didn't even recognize the person standing in front of her. And honestly, I didn't either. How did I let it get this far? How did I become the man who betrayed someone who loved me so deeply? And worse, with her own mother. I sat on the floor of my apartment, my back against the wall, surrounded by unopened food containers and empty bottles of water. I hadn't eaten properly in days. I couldn't. Every time I tried to swallow, guilt would tighten in my throat like a vice. Then came the knock. It was sharp, urgent. I thought, for a fleeting second, that it was her. I ran to the door, heart pounding, but when I opened it, it was her father. Her father. A man I had met several times. A man who had always treated me with decency and calm. But not now. Not this time. His face was hard, expression unreadable, fists clenched by his side. "Can we talk?" he asked coldly. I nodded slowly and stepped aside, letting him in. My hands were trembling. He didn't sit. He didn't even move far from the door. He just stared at me for a moment, his eyes like steel. Then he spoke. She told me everything. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. She told me she walked in on you two, he continued. That it wasn't the first time. That it's been going on behind her back. Behind all of our backs. I didn't try to deny it. There was no point. The truth was already out in the open, and denial would only make it worse. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Sorry?" he snapped. "Do you even understand what you've done? You destroyed my daughter. You betrayed her in the most disgusting way imaginable." I looked down at the floor, ashamed. "I didn't mean for it to happen," I murmured. "It wasn't planned. It wasn't right. I know that. But I never wanted to hurt her." He laughed bitterly. "You didn't mean to. Do you think that makes it better? You think this is something you can explain away?" I had no answers. Only pain. Only guilt. Then he dropped a bombshell I wasn't prepared for. "She's leaving," he said. "She's moving out of state. She doesn't want to see you ever again." I felt the floor shift beneath me. "She got a job offer in Seattle," he added. "And she's taking it. She's done here. She told me she can't stay in a place where every corner reminds her of you, of what you did." I wanted to ask when. I wanted to beg for a chance to see her, to apologize properly, to say goodbye. But I knew none of that would be allowed. And honestly, I didn't deserve any of it. "She asked me not to tell her mother," he said after a pause. "She said, She doesn't want her to know she knows. That's how much she wants to bury it. Pretend it never happened. I swallowed hard. My chest felt like it was going to collapse. I'm not here to threaten you, he added, but I needed you to hear this from me, man to man. You ruined something beautiful, something real, and I hope you live with that for the rest of your life. He turned and walked to the door, but before he opened it, he paused. One more thing, he said without looking back. Don't ever try to contact her again. Let her heal. Let her move on. That's the only decent thing you can do now. Then he left. The door clicked shut behind him, and I stood there, unable to move. The weight of his words settled deep inside me, anchoring me in guilt. That night, I sat on the balcony of my apartment and watched the city lights blur through my tears. She was really gone, and all I had left were memories I would never be able to share. A love I had shattered with my own hands, and a future that now felt like a punishment I had earned. I didn't see Rachel for 3 days. After our final explosive conversation, she blocked my number and vanished. I couldn't blame her. I had destroyed everything. And now, I was left to sit in the ruins of the life I used, to have a life that was never truly mine, because it was built on lies. The apartment was too quiet, too still. Every corner whispered memories. Her perfume still clung faintly to the cushions. Her laughter still echoed from the walls. And yet, there was no trace of her warmth. I barely ate. I didn't leave. I just sat there, phone in hand, staring at our last messages, hoping she'd unblock me, hoping she'd say something, even if it was hate. But what I received instead was worse. It was a letter, not from Rachel, from her mother. It came in a plain white envelope. No return address. Just my name in neat, almost graceful handwriting. I knew immediately who it was from. My heart dropped before I even opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No apologies, no emotions, just a list. A list of everything that could be used against me. Screenshots, messages, photos, even times and dates. It was clear she had kept track of everything, like she was preparing for this moment all along. At the bottom she wrote, "You will not contact Rachel again. If you do, all of this will be sent to her, her father, and the police. You and I both know what the consequences will be." I dropped the letter as if it had burned me. It wasn't a threat. It was a sentence. I was being silenced. She had taken Rachel away from me, not with violence, but with control, with fear, and I had no power to stop her. I stared out the window, feeling the weight of my choices close in around me. I had ruined Rachel's life, and now I was being erased from it. But deep down, I couldn't let go. Not yet. Not without giving her the truth. She deserved to know everything, not just the version her mother crafted. She needed to hear it from me. So I wrote her a letter. Not to win her back. Not to justify anything. Just to tell her the truth. Rachel, I know I have no right to speak to you again. I know what I've done is unforgivable. But if this is truly the last time you hear from me, then let me at least give you the truth, all of it. It didn't start with seduction. It didn't start with lust. It started with confusion, loneliness, and 1,000 tiny wrong decisions that snowballed into disaster. I didn't mean to fall, but I did. And it wasn't just once. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a betrayal, over and over again. Every time I looked into your eyes and smiled while hiding this shame. Your mother, she isn't who you think she is. She manipulated everything. She knew what she was doing. She started it. But I didn't stop her. I should have. I should have screamed, run, confessed. But I didn't. I let it rot inside me until it was too late. And now I've lost you. But if there's one thing I beg of you, it's this. Don't let her rewrite the story. Don't let her control the truth. One day, you'll see it all. Maybe not today, maybe not this year. But eventually, you'll understand what really happened. I'm sorry. For all of it. For not being strong enough to protect you from me. Goodbye, Rachel. I sealed the letter and left it at her door that night, just before sunrise. I didn't knock. I didn't wait. I walked away without turning back, knowing it might never reach her hands, and if it did, it might only bring more pain. But it was the only way I knew how to set her free. The next morning, I woke up to an empty inbox. No reply. No message. No knock. And yet, I felt lighter. She knew now. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to decide for herself. But that sense of relief didn't last long, because the silence that followed became louder, more threatening. I started noticing strange things. Shadows where there shouldn't be. Calls that ended the moment I answered. A black car that seemed to always be parked across the street. I was being watched, or maybe it was just guilt eating me alive. But when the job I had lined up suddenly vanished with no explanation, and when 2 of my friends stopped answering my calls after years of loyalty, I knew this wasn't just in my head. She was destroying me. Quietly. Legally. Completely. I was being erased from every corner of Rachel's world, and now from my own. And I couldn't stop her. Because she had everything. Because I gave it to her. I stared at the text on my phone until the screen dimmed and went black. My fingers were shaking. My heart pounded louder than the silence in the room. She knew. Emily knew. There was no undoing what had been done. The secret I had buried so deep had clawed its way to the surface, and now I was standing in the wreckage of the life I had tried to protect. I didn't even know how she found out. Maybe my mother had confessed. Maybe Emily had read something. Maybe someone had seen us. None of that mattered anymore. What mattered was that she was gone. She had left that morning with nothing but her purse. No suitcases, no boxes, just her keys and the pain I had put in her heart. I tried to call her, but it rang twice and went straight to voicemail. I sent her a dozen messages, none of which were answered. It felt like someone had reached inside me and crushed my chest. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about the fact that I had lost the only person who truly loved me for who I was. And worse, I had lost her to someone I could never hate. I drove to my mother's house without thinking. I didn't even remember getting in the car. The whole world looked like it was underwater. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw her sitting on the porch, waiting. She looked older than I remembered. Her face was pale, and her hands trembled as she clutched a mug of coffee she had probably not touched. I got out of the car, slammed the door too hard, and walked toward her. She didn't stand. She didn't speak. She just looked at me with those same eyes that had haunted me every night for the past few months. "Why did you tell her?" I asked. She didn't answer. "Did you want to destroy everything? Were you just bored?" I kept my voice low, but the anger behind it cracked like thunder. She shook her head slowly. Her voice was a whisper. She had a right to know. She had a right to be happy. We both did. You should have kept your mouth shut. "You think I wanted this?" She snapped, finally standing. "You think I wanted to ruin your life?" I told her because I couldn't sleep at night anymore. Because every time I looked in the mirror, I hated what I saw. I told her because I thought maybe the truth would give her the choice I never had. I stepped back. Her words hit harder than I expected. "What are you talking about?" I asked. She looked at me like she wanted to cry but couldn't. "You think this started with you, but it didn't. Years ago, I was in love with someone. Someone I never got to choose because I was told who I should be with. I made my mistakes. But this, you and me, this was the biggest one. And I couldn't keep living like it was normal. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch something. But more than anything, I wanted to rewind time and erase every choice that led us here. So now what?" I asked. "She knows. She hates me. Probably you too. What now? Now we live with what we did. That's all we can do." I sat down beside her. The porch creaked under my weight. We were silent for a long time. The kind of silence that suffocates you slowly. "I don't think I can forgive myself," I said finally. "I don't think I can either," she replied. The wind picked up. A few leaves rolled across the wooden boards. Somewhere in the distance a car passed by, but it felt like we were in a bubble, cut off from the rest of the world. I thought of Emily, her laugh, her stubbornness, the way she would always hum under her breath when she did the dishes. I had ruined all of that. "She's never coming back, is she?" My mother didn't answer. She didn't have to. I already knew. I sat at the edge of my bed with my head in my hands. My breathing was slow, almost forced, as if every inhale was a battle. My chest felt tight. It was not the kind of tightness you get after a workout or when you're winded. This was deeper, emotional, a mix of dread, shame, and a strange, sickening kind of sorrow. Across the room, my phone buzzed again. I had turned off notifications hours ago, but her number still popped through. Rachel, my girlfriend, the woman I had lied to for weeks, the one I had betrayed in the worst way possible. And worst of all, the person I betrayed her with was her own mother. I had been trying to convince myself that this was all just a bad mistake, a moment of weakness. But as the days dragged on, I realized it was never just a moment. It had become something else, something toxic and real, something that had taken root in the quiet corners of my life and refused to let go. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the world looked so normal. A dog barked somewhere in the neighborhood. A delivery truck rolled by. Children played across the street. It was hard to believe that behind the walls of this home, lives were being shattered. When I finally looked down at my phone, there were 6 missed calls and at least 15 messages. Most of them were from Rachel, but one caught my attention. It was from Linda. I hesitated before opening it. It read, "We need to talk. This can't go on. Meet me at the lake house. Tonight. Alone." The lake house. That cursed place. The same one where everything had started, where Linda first crossed the line, and I let her. The same place I had told Rachel I'd never visit again, because it held bad memories from my childhood. The irony was unbearable. I closed my eyes and leaned my forehead against the cold glass. I knew I shouldn't go. Every part of my conscience screamed at me to delete the message and disappear. But I also knew this had to end. Not just for me. For Rachel. For Linda. For the mess we had all created. The drive was quiet. I turned off the radio. I wanted to hear nothing but the hum of the engine and the occasional crunch of gravel under the tires. As the sun dipped below the trees, the lake house came into view. It looked older than I remembered. The paint was chipped. The roof sagged. It looked tired, like me. Linda was already there. She stood on the porch, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. She wore a long coat, and her hair was pulled back. She didn't look like a mother. She didn't look like a lover. She just looked human, flawed, wrecked. I parked and got out slowly. My footsteps were heavy as I approached the steps. She didn't speak. She just moved aside and let me walk in. Inside, the house smelled like old wood and memories. The same coffee table was there, the same couch, even the same photograph on the mantel of a younger Linda holding a baby Rachel in her arms. That picture hit me harder than I expected. Linda sat down across from me. She poured herself a glass of wine, then poured one for me. I didn't touch it. "I can't sleep," she said finally. "Not since that night." I nodded but said nothing. She looked at me, eyes red. Maybe from crying. Maybe from exhaustion. I thought I was in control. I thought it was just temporary. But it wasn't. It grew. It changed me. "You're not the only one it changed," I said quietly. Linda reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. She slid it across the table toward me. My hands trembled as I picked it up. "What is this?" "Letters. From Rachel. From when she was little. She used to write them to me when she went to summer camp. I found them this morning." I opened the envelope and scanned the pages. Crayon handwriting. Little hearts. Words like "Mommy, I miss you." "Mommy, I love you more than the stars." Tears welled up in my eyes. "What are you trying to say?" I asked. Linda looked down. "That I forgot who I was, and who she is, and who you are. I forgot that none of this was love. It was desperation, escapism, an illusion." Silence stretched between us. She continued. "I think about the day she finds out, how her face will look, how her voice will sound when she asks me why. I imagined it too. I had been imagining it for weeks. The betrayal in Rachel's eyes, the pain, the collapse of everything she believed in. "We need to tell her," I said. Linda's eyes shot up. No, we don't. You don't understand. If we tell her, we destroy her. If we don't, we destroy ourselves." She stood up abruptly and walked to the window facing the lake. "You still love her?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. "Then leave. Leave and never come back. Cut this off, forever. I stood too. My legs felt weak, but I walked to the door. Before I stepped out, I looked back at her. You should tell her, because if you don't, I will. Linda turned slowly. Then I guess this is goodbye. The door clicked shut behind me. I stood on the porch for a moment, breathing in the night air. It was cold, real, honest, and I knew then that everything would change. Whether she found out tomorrow, or 10 years from now, the truth was coming. And it would hurt. I sat alone in my car that night, parked just a few houses down from hers. The street was quiet, bathed in the dull orange glow of a street lamp. I hadn't planned to come here. My mind had driven me without consent. My hands had gripped the steering wheel so tightly that the leather had creaked beneath my fingers. I stared at her front door, unmoving, waiting for something that I didn't even understand. I had told myself that I was done, that there was nothing more to say. But it was a lie, one of many I had been feeding myself over the past few weeks. I wasn't done. Not with her, not with the truth. Something deeper had begun to rot inside me, a sense of obsession mixed with confusion and longing. I hated her, but I missed her, and that contradiction was eating me alive. The porch light flickered on, and the door opened. She stepped out slowly, as if sensing me there. She wore a simple grey sweater and black slacks, her hair tied loosely at the back. She looked older than I remembered, more fragile, but her presence still twisted something inside my chest. She looked around, scanning the street, until her eyes landed on my car. She didn't flinch. She walked toward me slowly, like someone approaching a wild animal, unsure if it would run or attack. I opened the door before she could knock on the window. I stepped out, but I didn't say anything. Neither did she. For a moment, we just stood there in the quiet night, shadows wrapping around us like old memories. Then finally I spoke. Why? It came out like a whisper, but it felt like a scream in my throat. She looked down. Her hands trembled as she rubbed them together nervously. I never wanted this to happen. I never meant to hurt anyone. That wasn't enough. Not anymore. You destroyed everything. Everything I had with Emily. Everything I believed about myself. You were supposed to be her mother. She looked up, eyes wet with tears. I was also human. I was lonely. I was weak. And in you I saw something I hadn't felt in years. Something that made me feel alive again. I wanted to laugh, to scream at how selfish that sounded. But instead, I just stared at her. You ruined her. Do you even understand what you did to your own daughter? She broke down then, covering her mouth as a sob escaped. Her knees buckled slightly, and she leaned against the side of my car for support. I didn't plan it, I swear. It started with those late-night talks when you stayed over. You were kind, you listened, and I kept telling myself it was harmless, that it would stop, but I let it go too far. My throat tightened, and I let it go too far too. I didn't stop either. There it was. The truth neither of us had wanted to admit. I wasn't just a victim. I had allowed it. I had enjoyed it. I had pursued it. She stepped closer, hesitantly. I didn't move away. I think about it every night. I hate myself for it. I know you hate me too. I don't hate you. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. She blinked in surprise. I don't hate you, but I can't forgive you either. I understand. We stood there, face to face, caught in the ruins of what we had built with silence and secrets. Do you still see her? She asked it so gently that I almost missed the pain beneath her voice. Number. She won't answer my calls. She blocked me everywhere. She's hurting. She doesn't understand how to process any of this. How could she? I don't even understand it myself. She nodded. You loved her. I know that. And I believe you love me too in some way. Maybe that's what makes this all so painful. It does. It really does. She looked at me for a long time. Do you want to come in? Her voice shook as she said it. I didn't answer. I looked past her, at the house behind, at the door I had walked through so many times, once with love, once with lies. I took a deep breath and stepped back. Number. Not tonight. She nodded slowly, the ghost of a smile on her lips. It wasn't happiness. It was resignation. Be safe, she whispered. I turned, got back in the car, and started the engine. The street remained still as I pulled away, her figure getting smaller in the rearview mirror. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was finally leaving something behind. Even if the wound was still wide open, I drove without knowing where I was going. The night was thick with fog and silence. My thoughts spun wildly. My hands were clenched on the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Everything I knew was collapsing, and I felt like I was in a free fall with no one to catch me. I pulled into a parking lot near an empty gas station and just sat there. The soft hum of the engine was the only sound. I stared ahead into the darkness, hoping it would stare back and give me an answer, but it never did. My phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look. I already knew who it was. Her, Nancy, my girlfriend's mother, the woman I never should have touched, the woman who ruined me. Or maybe I ruined myself. Maybe it was both of us. The screen lit up with a message. Just one word. Please. I shut my eyes tight. I didn't know what she was asking. Forgiveness, another meeting, or just to be heard. None of it mattered, because all I could see was the look on Emily's face. My girlfriend, her daughter. The girl who had once looked at me like I was her entire future. That was gone now, shattered, replaced by disbelief and a hurt so deep I could feel it echo inside me. I had to face the truth. I had betrayed Emily. Not just with anyone, but with her mother. The one person who should have been off limits. It had started as something innocent, just lingering glances, a conversation too long in the kitchen, a touch that lasted 1 second too many. But we both knew the line, and we crossed it anyway. The first time it happened, it was in silence, in secrecy. We never spoke about it afterward, but it kept happening, again and again. We pretended it was something out of our control, but it never was. We chose this. We fed it with lies and excuses. I wanted to believe it meant something, that I was more than just her escape, that maybe we were two people lost in different ways who had found each other in the storm. But now I knew better. We were just selfish, and Emily had paid the price. I stepped out of the car and leaned against the hood, breathing in the cold air. The silence around me felt like a punishment. My chest ached in a way that wasn't physical. It was deeper than that. A slow, dull pain that made every heartbeat feel like it hurt. I remembered the way Emily used to smile, the way she laughed when I told her stupid jokes, the way she looked at me like I was the only one in the room. All of that was gone, torn apart by what I did. What we did. The wind picked up, rattling a nearby sign. It sounded like the world whispering secrets back to me. I could almost hear her voice, Emily, asking why. Why her? Why me? Why now? I had no answers. My phone buzzed again. I picked it up without thinking. Where are you? That was Nancy. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed something I never thought I'd say. We're done. I stared at the words. Simple. Final. I pressed send. I didn't know what she would do. Cry. Call. Show up at my door. But none of that mattered anymore. Because I finally realized that no matter how complicated it was, I had crossed a line I could never uncross. I climbed back into the car and started the engine. I had nowhere to go, but I had to move. Sitting still felt like giving up. I didn't deserve forgiveness. Maybe I didn't even deserve to be heard. But I had to face what I had done. To Emily, to myself, to everything we had built. As I drove away, the fog began to lift just slightly. I could see the road ahead again. It wasn't clear, it wasn't bright, but it was there. And I would drive it alone, because some mistakes don't get fixed. Some damage doesn't heal. And some people, no matter how much you wish otherwise, are lost forever. I hadn't seen her for days, not since that night. I tried to convince myself that space was good, that time would dull everything. But every hour stretched into 100, and every one of them hurt like hell. The guilt wasn't just gnawing at me anymore, it had hollowed out my chest. I was an echo of myself. The worst part? I missed her. Both of them. In different ways, for different reasons. And that twisted truth haunted me every time I closed my eyes. One late night I drove past their house again. No plan, no excuse, just the need to feel something familiar. The porch light was off, the curtains drawn. It looked abandoned. Or maybe I had just become the ghost. I stopped a few houses away and sat in the car with the engine running. My fingers drummed against the steering wheel. The silence outside was deafening. That's when my phone lit up. It was her daughter. "We need to talk." Those 4 words cracked something open inside me. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the message as the gravity of it pulled at my lungs. I texted back 1 word. "When?" Seconds later. "Now. I'm outside." I turned my head slowly, half expecting it to be a prank, a trick of my fractured mind. But there she was, standing under the street lamp, arms crossed, her eyes locked on mine through the windshield. I got out of the car. The air was colder than it had any right to be. We stood in silence for a moment that felt longer than everything we'd lived through. "Why?" she finally said. I couldn't speak. "Tell me why it had to be her," she said, voice trembling. "Of all people, why her?" Her question stabbed straight through my ribs. I didn't even try to defend myself. What could I possibly say? "I don't know," I whispered. I was weak. I was confused. And she was there. She shook her head and laughed bitterly. "She was always there. She raised me. And you still—" She couldn't finish. "I never meant for it to happen," I said. "But it did. And you let it. More than once." I closed my eyes. I didn't want to see her face twist any further with pain. But I also knew I deserved every word, every tear, every bit of hatred she could throw at me. "I don't think I can ever forgive you," she said. I nodded. She stepped closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you love her?" That question hit harder than anything else. Not because of what it meant, but because I didn't know the answer. "I don't know," I said. "I'm not even sure I know what love is anymore." She looked at me, eyes filled with something beyond sadness, beyond betrayal. It was as if she saw a stranger in front of her. And maybe that's all I was now. "I thought I knew you," she said softly. "But you were just a shadow wearing someone I loved." She turned and walked back toward her car. I stood there frozen as the taillights disappeared into the distance. When she was gone, I got back into my car and stared at the dashboard. Everything felt numb. There were no tears left, no anger, no thoughts, just silence. And in that silence, I realized something brutal. This wasn't the fallout anymore. This was the afterlife of a choice I could never undo. And I would carry it like a cross, heavy and sharp, for the rest of my life. I sat at the edge of the motel bed, staring at my reflection in the dusty mirror across the room. The television was on, but the volume was muted. A weather forecast played silently. "Clear skies," the reporter mouthed. "Nothing about the coming storm. Nothing ever prepares you for the kind of storm that doesn't make noise, the one that brews inside people." My phone buzzed for the 8th time. I didn't need to check it. It was her, Sarah. Every text was like a scream I couldn't answer. I knew this silence between us was temporary, but its weight felt permanent. I had broken something that could never be put back together. Not just between us. Something deeper. Something inside me too. Last night, after I drove away from her house, I didn't even know where I was going. I just drove. The headlights cut through the dark like they were trying to show me a future I could believe in. I ended up in a cheap motel, an hour outside of town. A place where nobody knew me. A place where I could fall apart without witnesses. There was a knock at the door. I froze. For a second, I thought it was her. Maybe she had followed me. Maybe she wanted to scream at me in person. Maybe she wanted answers I didn't have. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Sarah. It was her mother, Elaine. She wore a long coat. Her eyes were hidden behind sunglasses even though it was night. She looked like she was hiding from something brighter than light. I stepped aside. She entered without saying a word. The silence between us wasn't the kind of quiet that comes with empty rooms. It was the kind that screams without making a sound. She stood by the window, looking out at the empty parking lot. Then she turned to me. "I told you this would happen," she said softly. "You said it was a mistake. You said it would end. But you kept feeding it." Her voice wasn't angry. It was exhausted. "I didn't want to," I whispered. "I swear I didn't mean for it to go this far." She turned fully to face me. Her expression was pale and tight. But it did, and now she knows. The words landed like bricks inside my chest. Sarah knew. Whether it was her instincts or something I overlooked, she had figured it out. Maybe not the entire story, but enough. Enough to destroy her. Elaine walked slowly to the chair by the dresser. She sat down like her body carried too much history. "I've lost her," I said. My voice cracked. "I've lost everything." "No," she replied after a long pause. "You still have the truth. And now you have to live with it." We didn't speak for a while. The television screen flickered as the silent weather report looped again. Clear skies. Another lie. I stood up and walked to the door. My hand rested on the knob. "I can't do this anymore," I said. "I don't know who I am when I'm with you. I don't know who I was when this started. But I know I can't be that person anymore." Elaine stood too. She moved toward me slowly. Her hand reached out and touched mine on the doorknob. "You're right," she said. "This ends now." And it did. Not with a kiss. Not with tears. Just two people facing a door, knowing that once it closed, something would stay behind in that room, something neither of us could carry anymore. She left first. I stayed behind. I sat on the bed for hours, watching the sunrise inch through the motel window. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. Sometimes pain doesn't come like fire. It comes like frost. And when the light finally filled the room, I knew what was next. Part 20 was waiting. The part where I face Sarah. The part where I speak the truth out loud for the first time. But first, I had to survive the silence. I did not think anything could surprise me anymore. After everything that had happened, from the twisted betrayal to the nights haunted by guilt and silence, I believed I had reached the limit of what the human heart could endure. But the final moment proved me wrong. It had been weeks since I last saw either of them. Emma stopped replying to my messages. Her mother vanished completely. The house that once felt like a second home to me stood empty whenever I drove past it. I told myself I just needed closure. A final word. A goodbye. But deep down, I knew I was chasing ghosts. I sat at the bar of a small restaurant on the outskirts of town. It was the same place where Emma and I had celebrated our 1-year anniversary. The irony was unbearable. I ordered a drink I did not need and stared blankly at the television mounted on the wall. News flickered in the background. None of it reached me. All I saw was her face. Both of them. Then I heard the bell at the door. I did not turn around. I could feel her before I saw her. It was instinct. Like a thread between us had been pulled tight for the last time. She sat beside me. Quiet at first. I waited, unsure if I had imagined her. Then I turned, and it was her. The woman who had broken my world apart with a kiss. "You look tired," she said. Her voice had not changed. Still calm, still calculated. I could not tell if it was kindness or control. "I am," I said. "I haven't been sleeping much." "I figured," she replied. "Me neither." We both sat in silence. The bartender looked at us curiously but said nothing. He must have seen couples like us before, broken in different ways, bound by secrets. She reached into her purse and slid a small envelope toward me. "What is this?" I asked without touching it. "Closure," she whispered. I stared at it for a long time. My hands trembled before I finally picked it up. Inside was a letter, her handwriting, carefully written. I glanced at the first line. "I loved you in a way I never should have." But it was real. I looked up at her, but she was already standing. "You don't have to read it now," she said. "But you should, before it's too late." "Where are you going?" I asked, panic rising in my throat. "Somewhere far," she said. "Somewhere I can't hurt anyone anymore." I stood too quickly, knocking over the glass beside me. It shattered on the floor, drawing the attention of everyone in the bar. I did not care. I followed her outside. Rain had started to fall. Light at first, then heavier, like the sky itself was trying to wash the past away. She turned to me in the parking lot, her hair soaked, her eyes burning. "I didn't plan any of this," she said. "You have to believe me. I never wanted to hurt you, or Emma, or myself." "Then why?" I shouted. "Why did you do it?" She looked up at the sky for a long time before answering. "Because I was lonely," she said. "Because I was afraid. because you made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. And because I'm human, weak, broken, there was nothing I could say. No words to erase what had been done. I hope you forgive me one day, she whispered. And then she walked away. I stood there, frozen, until her figure disappeared into the darkness. I sat in my car for a long time after. The envelope rested on my lap like a weight I could not lift. When I finally opened it, the letter unfolded like a wound. She spoke of memories, of regrets, of nights she cried alone, knowing that every step she took deeper into our secret brought her closer to destruction. She wrote of Emma, of how much she hated herself for hurting her own daughter. And she wrote of me. You made me feel alive again, she wrote. But in doing so, I killed everything I loved. By the end of the letter, my hands were wet with rain and tears. The ink blurred in places, but the meaning remained sharp. I never saw her again. Emma never spoke to me again. Time moved forward, but I did not. I remained there, somewhere in the past, holding on to the ruins of something that should never have existed. People talk about betrayal as a single act. One moment, one mistake. But they are wrong. Betrayal is a slow unraveling. It begins in glances, in quiet thoughts, in things not said. And by the time you realize what has happened, the damage is already done. I wish I could say I healed, that I learned something, that I found peace. But some stories do not end with lessons. Some just end. This is mine.